So we're now going to talk about some US issues, in particular account-to-account and person-to-person payments. Matt, can you outline the issues and tell us what the banks are doing to address this issue?
Sure. It's an interesting topic, and it's one where the United States lags other countries. It's a challenge in the market in the United States. And what it really comes down to, and I believe the largest barrier or challenge in the United States, we haven't yet agreed to how we're going to designate the person that we're sending the money to. Do I have to have their bank account information to pay them? Can I pay them at their cell phone number? Can I pay them at their email address? Or should I go out of the banking network and use their PayPal account to pay them? So banks are faced with all of these challenges. Some of it's a new product issue, some of it's a regulatory issue, some of it's risk, but they're all struggling with how do we let one person pay another person, and what information do they need to do so? And then to compound this just a little bit more, what's the role of the mobile phone in this person-to-person payments challenge?
But people have been doing person-to-person, think Western Union. People have been doing account-to-account and person-to-person for a long time. What the banks are trying to figure out is how they can play in that in a secure and safe manner, because you don't want someone to be able to pick up your cell phone and transfer, if you lose it, and transfer money to someone else and clean your account out.
So why haven't systems such as VPay by Visa, which is using the account number of the card as an identifier, why hasn't that taken root in America then? Is it because it isn't a big enough issue, or is it to do with the segment of the market we're talking about?
I think the other issue is, and it's interesting because Mark lives in the UK, he wouldn't hesitate for a minute to give me his bank and branch code, right? He'd just give it to me.
I might do.
Especially if he knew I was paying him. He wouldn't hesitate for a second to provide that information. In the United States, culturally, our credit card number or our checking account number, we've been told for years that that's secure information, don't give it to anybody, which is really what creates this problem. If I were willing to give Nancy my bank number and account number, she could send me, if she had access, she could send me an ACH that would settle overnight, or she could send me a wire that would settle real time. But there's this resistance in the United States.
Do you pay for your credit card over the phone? I mean, do you give credit card?
I'm not saying it's rational, mind you, but it is there.
The other thing is, if I write you a check, you have it.
It's already on
it's
the
on the bottom of the check. It's encoded on the. So it's a cultural thing as well.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of people at the moment who are trying to figure this out. And what's actually happening now is a challenging situation is actually getting a little bit more fragmented at this point, because more and more people are saying, well, sign up for my service and register for a unique user ID at my service. Yeah. And then as long as the person who wants to pay you and you both have this unique relationship with me, you can settle through me. So it's actually getting worse rather than getting better right now.
So those are the problems. How are they going to be resolved? Obviously, they will be resolved at some point.
It'll have to come down to the ability for the clearinghouse or some central organization that all banks trust with processing on their behalf, as well as customers having one ID who can settle and clear these things.
I think it's quite interesting if you look at India about what's happening there. The tax office is actually creating a universal, unique number for every person, and that's going to be the basis of a portable bank account number. So, as you say, one person who's trusted is delivering it, and then all the other services can be built on top of it.
Right.
Now, that's a major undertaking, but they're taking very much a long-term industry view, and it has additional social benefits to it as well to do that.
So do you think America could actually learn something from India in this case?
Well, they could most certainly learn something from Europe. On the other hand,
would you like to elaborate on that? I think it's important to get that out there.
Well, but obviously the things we've been discussing, account-to-account or person-to-person payments, is something we've been doing here for decades. I mean, the last time I've written a check was '86. And
I was still at school.
You were still at school, I wasn't. But the point is, we had those standards up and running, and we've been benefiting from it ever since. Or better, my teenage daughter is benefiting from it, because if she needs money, I just go on the internet banking thing, and she has the money 20 seconds later. I mean, it's as easy as that.
Are American banks flooding to your door to ask you for advice on this?
Well, we had a couple of discussions on the topic, or actually multiple discussions on the topic. But as Matt and Doug just said, it's not that the problem is not known. I mean, I think you understand what needs to be done in order to solve the problem.
Nor is it the technology is not there to do it.
That's right.
And I believe, again, that banks have got a very important role to play in there. The very first project that Clear2Pay did as soon as we started operations at the end of 2001 was built a P2P system for European banks on behalf of a major credit card organization. And the technology works beautifully, but if you don't have a sales channel or if you don't promote the product to the market as such, you're not going to get to critical transaction levels, which makes the business economically sustainable. And hence it was already in place. Also the reason why the PayPals of this world have significantly less success in Europe than they have in the United States, because there's less of a need for it.
The problem's already been solved.
The problem is solved.
The challenge I think that banks face in this space is either they can cede the market to a non-bank competitor like PayPal, or they can outsource it to someone who's going to charge them transactionally.
Right.
And in that model, I think banks are going to find it very difficult to charge their customer for this person-to-person payment. But if they've outsourced it to someone else who's going to charge them by transaction, well, that's not a good business case, because the more volume you have, the more money it costs. I would argue that a bank needs to make sure, again, it's part of the conversation about personality and technology, that they have a payment infrastructure that allows them to react to this marketplace. But the big banks need to solve this problem in the United States.
And I do, that is a good point. I mean, Michelle mentioning Europe and Matt mentioning it's a domestic U.S. Our first customer in the States uses that product to do remittances, but they're all outside, from the branch to India, China, Mexico, Philippines. So it's domestic A to A and P to P that we're speaking about.
I think part of the problem, there is a difference between P to P and A to A.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that the solution we're talking about has been banks. It will leave all the underbanked and non-banked out of that. That's why we're seeing large growth in prepaid cards in the US, because that is a way of transferring value. Yeah. So I guess there's also a realization that perhaps there needs to be something that is much broader than just a bank solution for it to be universal. Mm-hmm.